Okay, so we're at episode 5 of the Central Virginia Forest Direct Primary Care show. Sorry, because we're both Forest Direct Primary Care and Boonesboro Direct Primary Care. We're going to talk about some things going on locally. Funny, I just wanted to bring up, actually, I just thought of this. I was seeing some articles in some major newspapers talking about, hey, this is an opportunity because primary care is getting destroyed right now out there because no one's going to see the doctor, right? I mean, a lot less people seeing the doctor. They don't know how to do telemedicine well. They're overstaffed. And by the way, the insurance companies who are not paying out because no one's going to the doctor, they're not giving rebates like Allstate and other companies are. They're still keeping the money. And so these primary care doctors in regular system are getting destroyed. And now they're saying we need to go to a system where it's a monthly payment from the doctors get a monthly payment no matter what they do. And it's all based on quality indicators and metrics because the insurance companies will be paying the monthly fee to the doctor. So here's the difference. When the patient keeps the insurance company out of it and pays the doctor directly, it's called direct primary care. When these idiots want a system where the insurance company is paying monthly to the doctors, that's called an HMO, or capitated care, which failed in the 90s and will fail again, right? So they still don't get the picture. Once the third parties get involved, the people who are stealing all the money, which is the insurance companies right now, you'll see Allstate returning money. You're seeing some of the other ones returning some money, but you're not seeing United give money back. You're not seeing Aetna. You're not seeing Piedmont giving money back. So once the third party is the insurance companies get involved between the patient and the doctor, you've got a problem in care. Hence why direct primary care works so well. That was my soliloquy. You can comment or not. I'm just going to throw that out to you.
It works very well. It keeps patients healthy, and it keeps people who are not interested in the health of patients out of it, and that's the way it should be.
So for example, I know this is non-COVID discussion, but if an insurance company says, listen, we're going to pay you monthly no matter what happens, and so you as a doctor are trying to cut expenses and not see anybody, and you're not beholden to the patient. So where we in direct primary care are actually beholden to that patient. And so I've been asked before by a member of, I won't say what hospital, one time at a business meeting for the community, what quality indicators do you follow? Which, by the way, all of them are unproven in the real world. And the one I follow the most is if patients don't like our practice, they leave. Right, so that's called normal capitalism in a free market. Whereas if you're stuck with an insurance company and you hate it, good luck finding another one. You won't find a commercial on TV says, "Hey, take 15 minutes to save 15% in your health insurance," because there is no competition. It's all monopoly. And that's the reason why we want to get them out of it. That's why direct primary care works. So I'm going to get off my bandwagon. We're going to talk some COVID stuff. I'm sorry to do that, but I just thought it would be fun because I think I know I'm seeing virtually between emails and telemedicine and phone calls, a dozen people a day. So we're still on a regular schedule, maybe 5%, 10% less. You're the same, correct?
Yeah, about the same. Yeah.
Yeah, and so people are paying their low monthly fee. It's $80 for, well, we have the same, $80 for one, $135 for a couple, $165 for up to a family of 5. And our labs, we're going to start doing some labs again in a very secure, safe manner, slowly. And our labs are 90% off, and that's one of the biggest ripoffs. You have the same prices, I believe, on labs as well. So we're trying to help people there. It's going pretty well. But my prediction, because I think we're about 4 days out of the peak in this state, that the people will not hold until June 1st or June 10th. Now, this is an opinion. I think they're going to revolt. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen all over the country where people are pushing back against it, and some governors are starting to yield to that and wanting to open up. And we're not sure what's going to happen. We've seen over in Asia a little bit of what is happening. There's some second waves reported in different countries over there.
Yes.
That got hit earlier on, and we'll see if it translates equally to the U.S.
I don't know if we're, this is without any going into any, and I want to keep this about science, not about politics. I don't want to keep it about emotions should be kept low. I always find it funny that some people who are ready to be ready to go 10 years in a bunker are already 1 month protesting to get out. So it is kind of interesting. I'm not saying we have the answers. The problem's still going to be once, if you just let the horses out of the barn here, wouldn't this just spike once again?
The thought is that will happen until we get a vaccine, and the thought is if people mask but still socially distance to a degree while everybody masking. There's some models that look at if 80% of the general population mask, then we would effectively snuff out the coronavirus.
Okay, so here's the options. We can't stay in forever. That's not an option. At some point, they have to slowly, open this thing up. But they have to open up with masks. I'm assuming for everybody. People should be gloving and masking and washing and not touching their face. All that stuff. That's one option. And then, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm a doctor. This is where we're at. I don't think a vaccine has ever been. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an HIV type coat on this or component. It's not HIV, but has a similar component to that on this virus. And they've never even had a vaccine for HIV. So the odds are it's going to be a long time before we get this vaccine. Am I all over the place on that? What's your thoughts?
Oh, potentially, yeah. The other thing, and we talked about this in a couple of videos back about how much this virus mutates, and that makes it doubly or triply or quadruply difficult to make a vaccine because it's a moving target. And because of that, that alone makes it hard, in addition to the fact that we've not come up with a vaccine for some of these other viruses that are similar. So but one of the things we did want to talk about was Remdesivir, an antiviral
let's go
drug.
through that. So here's where I'm going to lead this into. So, okay, we may not got a vaccine. We're going to have an ability to clear it on our own, or those who don't clear it, treat it. Now, here's how we treat people. We have to watch their oxygen saturation. If they go to the hospital, and this is, by the way, an anomaly type pneumonia. It does not act like a normal pneumonia. If you hear the doctors working on this, there's no resistance really in those lungs. It's not like an ARDS. It's definitely a desaturation. Actually, we talked about this earlier. It is a desaturation that's just weird. And so if we have these treatment plans, which could be where they prone them, put them upside down, where they don't put them on a vent so early, and then maybe some of the pills, this is now, hydroxychloroquine is still not controversial, but then this HIV, it's an HIV drug you're talking about, correct?
Ebola. It was discovered a little over half a decade ago. It's called Remdesivir. Okay. It's a RNA nucleotide analog, and which I can explain what that means. It's I like the science of all this, and so what it is, if you imagine DNA, it looks like a kind of spiral, twisty ladder, and the sides of the ladder are it replaces one of those molecules, and so it looks like it enough so the virus plugs it in. But it doesn't look like it enough to actually be functional. And so it's just like a dead light bulb on your Christmas tree lights. And it reads it to a point, and then it can't read it anymore, and it doesn't function. And so therefore it stops the life cycle of the virus because it can't replicate. Gotcha. And then it just dies out.
Okay. One, that's Gilead's, or Gilead, I don't know how they pronounce it. That's their drug. Two, costs pretty high.
I don't even know. I haven't even looked at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen,
I,
economics have to play a role here, and that's some of the reasons why some people are not getting treated. And so, but there's been some good studies. Yes, you're hearing on results.
yeah, so there was one that was published a week ago, I think now, maybe a little bit longer, in the New England Journal of Medicine. It looked at really sick patients. There were 53 of them from all over the world. I mean, pick a country that's been in the news with COVID-19 and it's got at least one patient from that country. And so these were really sick patients. 68% of them saw improvement. 15% of them worsened. 7 of the 8, that 8 is 15%, is died. And so this study was important because it was from a bunch of different facilities in a bunch of different countries that were being treated in many different ways. And so there was no real standard of care, but the one correlation between them all was being treated with Remdesivir for 10 days. They got a loading dose of 200 milligrams the first day and then 100 every day for 10 days. And they plotted out the improvement that they saw. And I think they looked at 4 weeks after the completion of the 10-day therapy.
Is that an oral drug? Is that oral?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think
Okay.
so. No,
Okay.
it's not.
All right.
It's not. It is not oral.
Okay.
And all these people are comatose anyway.
Gotcha. So this is
and
the
so
worst
it
of
is
the worst
not oral.
patients.
I had to think about it for a second, but and so they continued to see incremental improvement over the 4 weeks after the completion of the therapy, and so that was great. There was some positive. There was more positive than negative. We have a 68% improvement, people improving versus 15% that got worse. And then there's another study that's ongoing through Gilead. It's the phase 3 trials that's being done. One of the big places that's doing it is the University of Chicago. And they have 125 patients in this study. 113 are considered severe. This is not a published paper, but they had the head specialist, Dr. Catherine, I wrote her name down, Mulane, the head infectious disease specialist at the University of Chicago. And she commented on this. And what she was saying is that only 2% of them, or I'm sorry, 2 patients died. And that out of the 113 that were severe, many of them, all but 2, didn't pass away, which is much better numbers than what we even saw with the treatment trial worldwide.
All right, so I'm going to do a 30,000-foot view here because the reality is you can't lock up the country forever. And we know that, right? We also can't. Now, whether you have the same amount of people getting sick over time, either they do it early or the same amount, but spread out, right? So we tried to spread this out because not so much we're saving people, though I think we are, we're also saving the resources. We would overwhelm the hospitals and we would have been destroyed because our medical resources weren't there. So now we're flattening this thing out. But if you look at the big picture, if we had any disease X, forget this pandemic, but disease X, and you can say to people, listen, 97% or maybe more, we're going to live from this disease. And of those 3% that we worried about were going to die, now we have maybe a treatment for it. But 97%, you guys are going to go through some symptoms, or at least 50% of those are going to go through some symptoms. 50% are not, we're finding, right? So I think the scariest thing was that we had nothing for people that were going to die. We had nothing. They were on vents. It was terrible, and we really had nothing for them. If we get something for them, I'm not sure we can't just open things up to that reason. I'm not a politician, and I'm not also an epidemiologist, but it just seems to me like any other infection, at some point, if you have an endpoint where you really can treat somebody, and I'm not sure this new drug is the one, but I'm saying if we find a magical drug that can treat, you can't wait for that vaccine a year from now. You might as well just say, okay, people are going to get this. Now, the other issue I'm going to bring up in that is that 50% asymptomatic. Are we looking at the wrong thing here? I've seen a video on this, and I'm going to explain this. I'm going to give you a question here.
Okay.
So here's it's a kind of a riddle here. So the planes coming back in World War II, they were examining them, and they had bullet holes all over the wings and all over the tail. So which one should they reinforce, the wings or the tail? Which ones do you think they did?
No clue.
Didn't matter, because those are the ones that returned. See, what happens is they were looking at the ones that returned. The ones that didn't return had bullet holes all over the cockpit and the engine. So if you're looking at only the ones that are coming back and you don't look at the right question, right, you're going to just you're just going to look at that. And the reality of the ones that didn't make it, they were getting blasted in the engine and the cockpit. So what I'm trying to say is we've got to figure out why these people are asymptomatic. How are certain people having antibodies? Was there a predecessor a long time ago or at some point ago of similar virus? Now they have antibodies that covered this. Or why are some people just getting no symptoms from this? How is that happening? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of geneticists that are finally getting to prove their mettle and do something that will hopefully affect a lot of us and be able to unearth that mystery a little bit, because there have been a lot of anecdotal stories of folks that live with somebody who's been diagnosed with COVID-19 and they don't get it at all. And they've been living in the same house, and
Yes.
why? Or they get it and they test positive for antibodies, meaning they have an immunity, and the other person was hospitalized or even worse. And why is that the case? There seems to be some sort of, whether it's immunologic or genetic or maybe environmental factor that is playing into this.
It's insane. So for patients, and this is absolutely for patients, you and I are confused on this. This is definitely driving me crazy as we can just have this discussion over and over again. And I do hear and see people send me links, and there's some absolute whack jobs giving out their thoughts on the conspiracy theory. There is aluminum hat wearing people, and there's some validity to a few things. You have to be able to I'm just touching my face, but I'll wash my hands here. But it is not clear cut. I guess that's my point. Don't listen to some of the crackpots. Let your doctor, ask Dr. Anderson, ask me, and I'm trying to sift through some of that to see what's real and what's not real. I saw the Remdesivir. I thought that's a great study. I think hydroxychloroquine is still iffy. I think there's some really hope on how they're not venting everybody. I think there's a lot of hope that maybe by June we're going to be able to really be closer to normal than not closer to normal. But my concern is, for example, I see online antibody tests. There's like 70 companies with antibody tests. I don't think they're trustworthy. What's your thoughts on that?
So it is not tested. There's only a very small handful of these antibody tests that have actually been FDA approved. The big reason behind that is their accuracy is lacking. And it is enough that we're trying to make big life decisions and decisions for communities and decisions for states and countries. And it's just not accurate enough to make decisions of that level. And so right now, by and large, they're not accurate enough to be doing for everybody. That might be different very quickly. And I really hope it is, because if we can better identify who's sick, who's already been sick and has antibodies and probably won't get sick, that'll change the landscape of this. And I am ready to change the landscape of this.
Absolutely. You can't hold people back forever. Typhoid Mary, when they tried to hold her back and she kept going back to work as a cook, they finally had to put her in prison forever. So people are not going to stay, even if they're just not going to stay home. Okay? And and I understand the first, was it right to assemble? Is that the First Amendment? But, you know, I understand all that. People want our social beings. They want to get together. We are going to start going crazy. I predict 2 to 4 weeks, people are not going to handle this well. So here's my hope. I do hope those one antibody test comes that we can use. People can we can actually give them. But the problem right now is I've had multiple patients ask me about this, and they are not what's called CLIA waived. And so you have to have a high complexity lab to do these tests. And so you and I don't have the high complexity lab. We can't even do it. We can be shut down as an office if we do these tests, even though they're simple finger stick. It's bizarre to me. So that's one thing a hurdle that has to be cleared. And I'd love to buy them in bulk and give them to all my patients for my cost so that they can figure out whether they're positive or negative, but we're not there yet. The second is the studies now are not being peer reviewed. I don't know if you obviously know that as well. So they're coming out so fast, they're not peer reviewed. The one from Stanford just came out and said a massive amount more people were positive when they did antibody tests in California. So, okay, was that first is that study wasn't peer reviewed. Second, that those antibody tests could be faulty, and they say a lot of them are, and which ones did they use? So you can see the dilemma. I'm hearing the media say one thing, and then patients ask me the same thing, and I'm like, listen, these studies aren't even valid yet. They're not even been looked at or peer reviewed.
Yeah.
It's really the weirdest time I've ever had a practice in 30 years. I don't know about you, but you know, I don't know where to go from here. In other words, what we're doing, and I know I've told you this, and I've told my patients that we're going to start slowly opening up to some routine visits that we can get some, well, not routine visits for medical problems. We got to take care of people, and it can't be shut down as a medical office completely. We're doing a lot of telemedicine, but I need to start seeing some people. You think you're going to be doing the same, right?
Yeah. As it's looking like we're cresting that peak.
Yeah.
And that's hard to say. The models say that Virginia as a state is past its peak by a couple of days. I still think us as a central Virginia region is probably behind the state as a whole. So I don't know if we've reached the peak yet here. That's just my thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm anxious to see my patients. I enjoy seeing them, and this has been hard on them for many reasons, medically, socially, financially, lots of reasons.
So here's the thing. I think to summarize, we're hoping there's a treatment because that will help things. If there's a good endpoint treatment of some medications, then we have some hope on that small percentage that really may succumb to this disease. I think we're hoping that the peak is going away, that maybe we can just squeeze out a little bit more, less social, you know, be a little more social and squeeze that back to normal. My practice and your practice is going to slowly start moving back to normal. Be careful about any tests you see that they're not validated. Be careful about what the media is saying and the studies that are coming out, they're not validated. And if you think you're frustrated, you definitely should be seeing between myself and you some frustration as well and confusion about all this. So it's not, sometimes uncertainty is the most frustrating time in anything in life, right? I mean, if you know bad things or good things happen, it's better, but it's the uncertainty that drives you insane. I think that's where I'm getting. Maybe I'm coming off that way, but where's your emotion? Where are you emotionally on this?
I'm done with this thing.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. So what do you want to end with? Anything you want to say?
No, not really. Earlier you were talking about us as physicians having, what is the word you used? Being beholden to the patient, and I want to echo that, but also in addition to that, beholden to an oath that I took in medical school. And I became frustrated with having to answer to somebody who didn't take an oath. And I took an oath, and I take that really seriously when it comes to my patients. And that's why I opened a practice in the way that I did. And it has been a great thing.
Absolutely. That's why direct primary care is great. Now, I understand people have to have insurance, and they need something to cover for catastrophic care. That's a discussion for another time. But my examples have been like doing lab work that I feel is appropriate, and that insurance used to block me. Oh, you can't do that lab. Well, now our labs are 90% cheaper. People just pay cash for it. And for a $10 thyroid test versus $110 down the block, they'll do a $10 thyroid test with me or you, and actually can tell, hey, I am hypothyroid, versus the insurance won't allow that to happen. Who is the insurance to stop you from me from asking for that blood test? And that was the problem. And so, yes, we are beholden to our patients only, not to these third parties who, they are part of what I call the medical axis of evil. But that's a discussion for another time. Let's do this again next week. We'll talk some more, and then we'll go from there. Hopefully, we're moving on from this, right?
Sounds good. Stay safe.
All right, you too. See ya.